Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Molly. Today we're going to show you how to make this panda tote. It's got little felt eyes, nose, tummy, arms and legs and ears, a full lining inside, and then webbing handles. So if you're looking at your pattern, you're going to see for your panda body that you have to cut 2 in your fabric. Fabric just means the fabric that you're using for the outside of the panda. Cut 2 in your lining, so that's whatever fabric is going to be on the inside. Today we're going to use the red for the fabric on the outside and the yellow for the lining. So we've cut 2 of each. Then you're gonna have to cut a lot of felt pieces. For the panda tummy, you're cutting 2 felt pieces. For the panda leg, you've got 2 as well. Same for the panda arm. Panda ear is 2. The panda tail is just 1. The panda eye is 2. And then that little teeny panda nose is going to be 1. You'll also need 2 18-inch pieces of webbing, 2 buttons for the eyes, and then some embroidery floss, some marking pencils, a regular pencil, and of course your pins and your scissors. We're going to get started by doing all of our notches and our markings as usual. This pattern has a lot of places that you have to mark to indicate the placement for the eyes, the nose, the tail, and the tummy, as well as the arms and the legs and the ears. So we're just going to start by doing that on the fabric pieces. So I'll set my yellow lining aside. Now these 2 pieces of red fabric are exactly the same, but I just have to pick one to use as the front of my bag. So the front is the side that's going to have the eyes, the nose, and the ears. And then I'll use this other piece later to mark the placement for the tail. So first thing I can do is just make my notches. That's easy enough. Actually, in fact, I'll place these together to cut my notches. Just make it a little quicker. So I'm using my scissors. These notch marks, these mark the placement of the ears. I'm just cutting into that triangle. The same on the side notches. These mark the placement of my arms. And then for the bottom, I'll mark the placement for my legs. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notches total. And now I'll work on the front of the panda. So you'll see these dots on the placement lines for the ear, for the eyes, the nose, and the tail. I'm going to mark these. I'm going to mark them with chalk, but first I'm just going to poke a hole with a blunt pencil into each dot. There are other ways that you can do this, but this always seems the easiest to me. So I've got my eyes and my nose. Now I'm going to just pop the holes for the tail, although I'm going to mark this later. So I'll use a blue pencil because that should show up nicely on the red, and I'm marking the right side of the fabric, not the wrong side. So I'll mark with chalk on every dot for the eye. This is just going to help guide me when I need to put my felt pieces down. Same for the nose. Now I will grab my other fabric piece, and this is going to be the piece for the back of the panda. On the back of the panda, I only have to mark the tail. So I'm just marking my tail placement. And now I can set my fabric pieces aside and work on my felt pieces. The only thing you have to do on the felt pieces is make your notches. Here on the tummy, I have a notch on either side. I'll just use my scissors. Go ahead and mark those. And then my panda legs. My little panda arms. And then my panda ears. All right, and I don't need to mark anything on my tail or my nose. There is a circle, a dot for the placement of the button on the panda eye, so I can pop through that, use my chalk. I want to flip these so that they are mirror images. And just, so I flip this one over to make the mark on the opposite side. Okay. Now I have everything marked, so I'm going to begin placing my panda face pieces, my eye and my nose, onto the front of the panda. So that will be the piece that I marked first. So this piece, and just to make the marks a little darker on the eyes, I'll kind of do them with an X. So I'm going to begin with my panda eyes. All right, so I'm taking my two felt eye pieces and I'm just going to start matching them up with the dots that I've marked. So I want my eyeball mark facing towards the top of the bag. So I'm just going to line that up there and then have my dot here. So I want that higher on the bag. And I'm just lining this up with the placement dots that I've marked. And I can also pin my nose on now. So the nose will correspond to the 3 dots that you've made for the nose placement. And then I want to pin those on just to secure them before I stitch. All right. You're gonna need a hand sewing needle for this. So we're using an embroidery needle threaded with embroidery floss. We're going to be using a whip stitch to tack down the eye on the finished piece. The whip stitch looks like this. So we've chosen to keep our stitches spaced about 1/2 inch. And you'll see, you only see the stitch just around the very edge of the panda eye. So the way I do a whip stitch is I come in from the back of the fabric. I've already got a knot in my thread. And I'm just going to, so I come in on the felt and then I go out on the fabric right on the edge of the felt. And then I'm going to come back up. I'll just place that pin this way. So I come back up through the felt, go back down through the fabric. So I'm always coming up through the felt down through the fabric. It's just the same thing repeated over and over again. I'm going to spend a little time doing this to attach both my eyes and my nose, and we'll be right back when they're all attached. I've finished my whip stitch on both of the eyes. Now I am just on my last couple stitches of the nose, and I just want to show you how to tie off the whip stitch. So I'll go back in here. And this is my last stitch. Okay, on the back, to tie it off, I'm going to make a loop, come through the back of the loop with my needle, move my knot down to the fabric, and then just hold the knot and pull. So I'll do it again. We call this making a balloon. You pop the balloon from the back, pull, keep your knot down, hold, and then now that I have my eyes and my nose on, I'm going to attach the buttons for the eyes. They've worn off a little bit, but those are my placement marks from my Panda eyes, so you could mark them again right now. Okay, and I will use another needle here. I've got a knot already in my thread. I'm going to come through the back of the placement dot and put my button on my needle and then go across. So I'm going twice around through each set of openings in the button. I'll tie off my button the same way I tied off my stitching. So make a loop, pop through the loop. Make a new knot, and I will attach my second button. So now that we have the eyes and the nose completed, we're going to move on to the back of the panda and attach the tail of the panda. I marked the placement for the panda tail with these 3 dots. This is my panda tail piece. I'm going to match the top 3 corners with those 3 dots, just like that, and pin in place. I'm going to whip stitch this again, but when I whip stitch, I'm only going to attach the top curves of the panda tail. I'm going to leave this open so it kind of has a little wiggly tail there. All right, so whip stitch again. Once you get into a little routine with the whip stitch, it can actually be pretty relaxing. So you can see here, I've just attached the top of the panda tail. I'm gonna leave the rest unsewn, flip over, make my knot, make a circle, top. And now it's time to attach our panda tummy pieces. So I'm going to do this the same exact way on both the front and the back pieces. Here are my 2 panda tummy pieces in felt. I've marked a notch on the side of each piece. And so there's my notch. And then I've also marked a notch on the side of each fabric piece. I'm just going to match up those notches. So I take my panda tummy, match this notch to that notch, and then I will pin. And I'm going to want to pin along every edge of the panda tummy. So now I'll match those notches up with each other. And I'm going to do the same here. Right, there's my notch. There's my notch. Notches are matched. Notch, notch. Notches are matched, and now I'm just going to spend some time pinning along my curves. When I stitch the panda tummy on, I'm going to sew every single side. So it's just an edge stitch that you're doing close to the edge all the way around the panda tummy to attach it. And I'm going to be using the machine for this step. All right, panda tummy is pinned, so now we're going to sew. And remember, this is not a 1/2 inch seam allowance, this is just on the edge of the piece. The tummy attached in the back, and now I'm going to do the same for the front piece. We have attached the tummy to both the back and the front with an edge stitch, and now we're going to work on attaching the ears, the legs, and the arms to the front piece only before we stitch them together. So I'll put the back piece with the tail away. I'll start with the arms and the legs. So the arm pieces are curved. We want to, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but in the sample we have them curved facing up, so it's kind of like he's waving at you. You've got that notch marked on your both panda arm pieces, so we can see it right there. You want to match that notch with the notch on the tummy and the body, and you want to put them right sides together with the arms facing in. So we have all of our notches matched up, pin in place. Same here. Find my notch, pin in place. And then we have the same for the leg pieces. So I have a notch here and a notch here. I want to match the notches on the leg pieces with the notch on the body, and I'm going to again put them right sides together, notches matching, facing in, and pin. When I sew these, I'm going to be just shy, so a little less than my 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm stitching across parallel to the cut edge on the legs and the arms. So I've got my tape here for my 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to have the edge of the felt a little bit shy of the 1/2 inch mark. I'll work my way around. This is a stitch just holding the arms and legs in place until we place the back to the front. So you'll notice I'm not necessarily doing a back stitch every time. It's okay if it's not as secure as a regular stitch. And now I'll work on the ears. So for the ears, you have 2. And you want to fold the ears in first, just so that it kind of makes it 3-dimensional. So I'm taking the bottom corner, there's my notch that marks the center, and I'm just flipping it in a little bit. I don't want to flip it so that the cut edges align. I just want to have it sort of that edge facing up a little bit so that it's making like a triangle here. And then I'll pin both sides down. Same here. And then before I attach these to the front of the panda, I'm just going to stitch across the bottom of the ear to hold it in place. And I'll do it again a little shy of my 1/2 inch. Both ears are formed. And now we're putting them onto the front of the bag. You have a notch up here and a notch over here. We want to match the notch on the ear with the notch on the top of the front. And then the same way we did with the arms and the legs, we're going to flip them right sides together, notches matching up. So again, notches aligned, right sides together. And then I'm gonna stitch just right back over the stitch that I used to attach the folds in the ear. So I'm going across and across here. take out my pins. This is a good opportunity to just clip some of your threads. I'm now going to begin attaching the straps of the bag. So I have two 18-inch pieces of webbing here. In the instructions, it tells you to have 1 yard of webbing, which is 36 inches. So you're just cutting that 36-inch piece in half so that you end up with two 18-inch pieces. The webbing pieces are going to become the handle. You want to again find your notches that you use to place your ears, and you take the cut edge of the webbing, center it on the notch, pin in place, and then you want to make sure you have no flip in the handle, no turn, and then place the other cut edge with the notch, centered on the notch. We're going to do the same for the back piece now. So on the back piece, you have those same notches. The ears aren't attached to them, but you'll take your webbing, again, center the webbing on the notch. Make sure there's no twists in your handle. Do the same for the other end. And then we're going to stitch across the edge of the webbing a little shy of a ½ inch. We're going to do what's called a reinforced stitch here, which is when we go back over our stitch with a long back stitch, just to make it secure so that when you pick up the bag from the handle, nothing comes apart. So I'll do that with all 4 ends of my webbing. So a little shy of my ½ inch mark. That's so that these stitches don't show when you finish the bag. And I'm going to go across, back, back, just to make that stitch more secure. Handles are attached now. I'm going to take a moment to clip all of my threads, and then we'll be back and I'll show you how to attach the front pieces together and then insert the lining. We're back with our pieces just cleaned up a little bit. I've clipped all of the threads, and now I'm going to start building the bag by taking my 2 outside fabric pieces and putting them right sides together. So we'll flip this piece right sides to this piece. And it becomes a little bulky here because you have all of those felt pieces inside. So we're just going to start by matching up our corners. So I've got that corner matched up. I'll put a pin, work my way over to this side, match that corner. And if you just take it edge by edge, it'll make it a little more manageable. So I'll do the same here. Always, whenever you're pinning something that is bigger or like a longer edge, you want to pin your ends and any matching points first, instead of just working your way down with pins. When you do that, you usually end up with things not matching when you get to your last pin. So the other spot I'll match is my notch to my notch on this side. Put a pin there. On this edge, I'll match my notches again. And now that I've got those spots pinned, I will go ahead and just pin in between all of those pins. So I'm just pinning every single edge except for the top of the bag. So this edge is not being pinned at all. We need this to be open for the bag. All right, so I have this piece pinned. I'm going to now work on my lining. So the lining pieces are going to go right sides together as well. So yellow side is up and then the yellow side is down, so the right sides are touching. And I want to do that same thing, match up my corners. These pieces obviously are going to be easier because we don't have all of that felt in between. And then the top corners. And now I'll continue pinning. I'm going to leave an opening here on the bottom edge of the bag, an opening that's just big enough for me to fit my hand through. I'll mark that opening with just a set of double pins in an X to tell me not to sew in between that space. All right, so both pieces are pinned everywhere except for that opening at the top. So no pins here, no pins here, and then I've left an opening down on my lining. On my lining, I'm going to sew from the very top edge here down to my one set of double pins, do a back stitch, and then come back over, start here, and finish here. Back stitching always at my ends. Same here, except I don't have an opening, so I'll start here, come all the way around, and finish at the top. This is going to be at your 1/2 inch seam allowance. My double pins here, I'm going to just get to them and do my back stitch. And I'll skip over that section. Remove my pins. I'm now going to attach my lining to the outside of my bag. This step can be a little bit confusing, so I'm just going to go through it slowly. You want to keep the outside of the bag with the wrong side facing out. So I'm going to keep the outside of the bag like this, with all of those little face pieces tucked inside. On this piece, however, the lining, I'm going to flip the entire thing right side out. So I now have the lining right side out and the exterior of the bag wrong side out. I'm going to take the lining and I'm going to put it inside. So I'm just placing it inside of the exterior of the bag. This way you have your right sides together. So the right side of the lining is now touching the right side of the fabric. And it's this circle, this perimeter, that I'm going to now match up and pin. I want to start with my seam. So I have my seam here for the outside of the bag and the seam here for the lining. I'm just going to open them up and match those seams. I'll put a pin on either side of that seam to hold it in place. And then I want to move my way around to the other seam on the opposite edge and do the same exact thing. So I open up the seam here and I open up the seam here. Now I'm going to pin all the way around the outside of the bag. So I just want to keep these cut edges aligned, and I'll just put more pins in to keep them together. Work my way around this side. And this is just pretty standard bag construction. Whenever you're doing a tote bag like this that has an open top, this is the way you do it. All right, I have the entire top of the bag pinned. We do not need to leave an opening in this stitching because we've already left an opening in the lining, and that's what will flip the bag through. So I'm just stitching all the way around the top at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If your machine has a removable attachment here, you can just pull it off to make this a little easier. So I pull that, set it aside, and it allows me to put my piece around this extension. So I put this through, and I'm lining up the cut edge with my 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to start as usual with my back stitch, go all the way around. I have the top of my bag completely sewn together, and now I can trim a few of my threads before I flip the bag right side out. Reach in to the lining. I'm going to pull it out. I have that opening you left in the previous step. And clip those threads too. So we've moved the lining out through the bottom of the bag. At this point, I'm just going to make a couple of cuts into the corner of the bag. So just across this corner, I'll trim away some of the seam allowance just to make it a little bit easier to flip. I don't want to go so close that I'm going to risk cutting through my stitches or having them pop out later. I can do the same at the corners of the lining. And then on the outside of the bag only, I'm just going to put a few triangle notches, some little clips, to help the curve of that bag, that bottom, be a little nicer when we flip it out. So now I can reach in through the lining, grab the bottom of the bag, and flip my Panda out. Ah! This is really, really cute. Okay, so I've got my lining flipped out here. We have to now close that opening that we left in order to flip it out. So I'm going to just make sure that my seam allowance, those cut edges are tucked inside the bag, kind of pinch them together. You could go to the iron for this step if it's sort of not folding in nicely. And I'm just gonna put a couple pins in to secure it, and then just do a stitch really close to the edge to close that opening. So here. I'm gonna take the lining and put it inside the bag. All right, one last step here just to make our panda complete, and I just can't believe how cute this panda is. We're going to press the top of the bag and then do a top stitch around the edge just to keep this flat. One thing to be very careful of here is when you go to iron this, and this should be something that an adult will help you with, is not to allow the iron to touch the webbing if you have a synthetic webbing. So if you have a cotton webbing, it's fine, but if this is a nylon webbing that you're using, it can melt, the iron can melt the webbing. So we're just gonna be careful not to actually put the iron on top of the webbing. Just use the edge of the iron to press the fabric, and we'll be right back with that. We have gone ahead and pressed the edges of the Panda tote. I'm so excited about how this is looking. He's just really, really cute. And now I'm just going to pin the top that I've pressed so that I can top stitch around it and everything stays together. So I'll just put a few pins just to hold the edges in place so they don't slip. Okay, and now we're going to do an edge stitch all the way around that perimeter. And again, I'm going to leave that cover off of the machine so that I can place this around. I want to let my handles remain out of the way. And just start here. So I'm just going pretty close to the edge on this. You just want to move slowly here to keep the handles from getting caught. Okay, we take out our pins, clip those last threads. Okay, and our panda is complete. Ready to take him with you. Don't forget to share your projects with us at Sew Shop Junior, and you can use the hashtag PandaTote. Thanks so much. We can't just wait to see what you make.